What's up, Modern Contractor TV? Teddy here. In this episode, we sit down with Sean Shapiro from Axia Advisors. He's a managing partner. Sean is from the roofing space. He built and sold his own roofing company, and he then pivoted into the brokerage space to specialize in selling roofing companies specifically. So if you are in the roofing space, you definitely want to listen to this episode because you're going to learn everything you need to learn about how do you value a roofing company? How do you sell a roofing company? What are the roadblocks? What are the red flags? We talk about it all in this episode. You guys are going to get a ton of value out of this. If you're in the roofing space or any home service space, really, you could get a lot of value from this episode. So let's get into it. Let's talk to Sean. Let's learn everything we can about buying, selling, and increasing the value of your roofing or home service business.
You're listening to Modern Contractor TV, the show for home service pros who want to build real business value, scale profits, and create a company that doesn't rely on them day to day. Hosted by entrepreneur, author, and advisor Teddy Slack, a builder of multiple seven-figure service businesses. Each episode brings you real-world strategies to help you grow, systemize, and prepare for a profitable exit. Let's get into it.
Hey, Sean, how you doing? Welcome to Modern Contractor TV.
Hey, Teddy. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this conversation. We've spoken in the past, and I'm really looking forward to this because obviously I'm getting into the roofing space, and that's your expertise. So I love having a conversation with guys that have come from the roofing space, and now you've pivoted to the brokerage space. So I'm glad to have you on.
Yeah, man. I'm glad we're adding one additional great member into the roofing community. So
that's awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah. So why don't you tell the audience kind of who you are, what your background is, and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. So Sean Shapiro, I'm currently the managing partner of Axia Advisors. We are a pretty boutique investment bank, which layman's terms is we represent people that would like to sell their businesses and help them go to market. I exclusively work in the roofing industry. So using a lot of my experiences of being an operator in the roofing industry, now in the investment banking side to be able to guide people through their own transactions and help them find the successful exit that they dreamt of. And it's been fun work for us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, and you were in the roofing space. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? How long were you in the roofing space? Did you grow up in that industry, or how did you get into that? And then, why did you decide to sell? Kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely did not grow up in the trades, did not grow up in the construction world. My dad was an electrical contractor. That was probably my only common bond to the construction world. But no, I went to University of Florida for finance. And that was during the kind of the Great Recession, came out, really wasn't a lot of finance jobs, pivoted towards real estate. That was in 2010 here in Jacksonville, Florida, learned the single family kind of fix and flip industry here. There's a lot of great opportunities in the real estate world. So I was doing a lot of renovations, rehabbing a lot of homes and reselling them. And I met my now business partner, Cameron. He was a project manager at the general contractor that I had subbed all my work out to for my renovations. And we kind of hit it off, and he grew up in the trades. His dad was a general contractor, and he had always dreamt of having his own operation eventually. And he left his general contracting firm that he was working for and came to me and said, "Hey, I want to go out on my own and do residential roofing." I had no background in roofing at all. Besides that, I knew how much I was paying all my roofers to replace all my roofs on my flips. So I was like, man, it's got to be good cash flow. They're banging out jobs. It takes them a day, and they're charging 20 grand for something that takes one day. So there's got to be some good margin there, good dollars per day. So Cameron came to me with a business plan, and I made a small investment in it as a kind of limited partner. And then fast forward, that was 2015, and we just saw that there was a lot of opportunity for both of us to work on it full time. So I kind of peeled back a little bit on the real estate stuff and then jumped in full time with him. And yeah, so we had a partnership at a company called Reliant Roofing that we started in 2015 in Jacksonville. Full service residential roofing contractor, really focused on a customer experience more than anything. We were really trying to focus on how do we reinvent the experience, the buying experience, the communication, all the things that people hate about dealing with home service contractors. We were trying to make it the best we possibly could. So we kind of looked at ourselves as like the Chick-fil-A of roofing, or down in Florida, the Publix of roofing, right? Where
Yep.
you get a great experience. So that's what we try to create at Reliant. It was started as Resi, and then we went into just commercial and resi. And then fast forward about 6 years on the dot, went to market, sold to a private equity group. We were pretty early to sell in terms of the consolidation of roofing. So we sold pretty early on, 2021. We were doing about 25 million in revenue. It was a good opportunity for us for a liquidity event. We had 125 employees. And there was just a lot of stuff that was going on where we were just like, hey, I'd like to take some chips off the table and kind of see the business to the next level with a financial backer. And yeah, so we sold the business and stayed on board for a little bit, and then yeah, the rest is history.
Nice. That's awesome, man. That's so cool to just say here that, you got into it the way you did, and you guys were so successful. I mean, I think, concentrate on the customer service. I mean, I try to tell a lot of my clients this, I talk to people about this all the time. Like, it's the little things that make the big difference. It doesn't, if you do the little things, the little details right, you can stick out from the crowd because these contractors aren't doing it. So it's like, if you're really good at that, you can, and I'm sure that's what, you could probably say that it helped with your success a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there was like, people always say like, what's the secret to success? It was like, we just did 10,000 micro details to the best of our ability. And if you put that all together, it ends up being a really great experience, not only for the customer, but also for our employees, right? Like,
Yep.
they love serving the homeowner. They knew that Cam and I were always going to have their back and say, go make Mrs. Smith happy. Whatever, maybe she's disgruntled about a rut in her grass, or her garden gnome got whacked by a
Yep.
shingle or something. It's like, just go make her happy. Whatever she needs, just make her happy, and just say, sorry, how do we fix the problem? And just go fix it and take care of it. And like, that kind of flywheel effect of doing like all the little things right time and time again just builds a reputation that no one can really take away from you. And by default, you kind of become the contractor in the space that everyone goes to and gives an opportunity to do business with, because they've heard so many great things about you, and they haven't heard any of those horror stories that you see on the local news of a contractor
Yep.
taking a bunch of deposits and running away with them, or whatever it might be. We were trying to just do the opposite of that time and time again. And it's really, like you said, like, it's not that we're all selling a commodity, right? Like,
Yep.
everyone sold the same GAF shingles that we
Yep.
sold. Everyone sold the same warranties, the same 6 colors. Like, there's no difference there. It was all how the sausage was made behind the scenes, and how that looked from a buying experience. People are not really excited about buying a roof, I would say, compared to like getting a kitchen remodel or a
Yep.
bathroom remodel or swimming pool. So it's like, I
Yep.
can't really excite you about it, because I know you're about to peel off 20, 30 grand that you really probably didn't want to give me. So I got to try to make this thing like a really, really great experience for you to feel like, okay, I got this roof. I had to have this roof, and it was actually a good experience getting it done. So that's kind of what we always were trying to solve for.
Yeah, no, it's very smart. I mean, it's so, it's just not the norm with the contractors, and I hate, it's like a repetitive thing I always bring up, but it's the little things, and if you do them right, you can really stand out from the crowd, and a lot of that comes down to even just like speed of service, right?
Yeah.
Responding, picking up the calls, getting the proposals quickly, doing what you say you're going to do, like the very simple things. But so I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you're probably bringing that same kind of mindset to the new business. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you pivoted into the brokerage space? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. So we obviously have a non-compete. Not that I was ever going to go back into roofing when Reliant was our one time of running a roofing company. Didn't want to go back into it. But yeah, there were certain things that I just I wanted to make sure when I sold the business that all the knowledge, because I didn't have all my other endeavors that I've done, real estate and other investments and stuff, none of it's roofing related. So I learned so much of me learning through my partner being in the industry prior to that, and just learning, growing for that 6 year period. Like, there was so much knowledge that I and so many experiences that I went through that you just can't recreate, or you can't learn in a book. And I didn't want that to die in a vine post transaction of just like, I have all these things and all these ideas and all these things that I can help others make sure that they don't fall into those same potential traps, or maybe there were some real hacks that we use that I could help guide a company before they exit to do X, Y, and Z to maximize the result, stuff like that. So that's kind of where it kind of drove us. Like I was like, well, we could do some business consulting. That really wasn't what I wanted to do. It was more like, let's do this representation work, because we had an investment banker that we hired. They were great. They knew investment banking, but they had no prior knowledge to roofing. There was really no one that really did a lot of deals in the roofing space because it was kind of new. Now
Yeah.
it's more mature, but we saw there was an opportunity there and said, man, we could use all these experiences of not only wearing the operator hat of running a roofing company, but also going through a transaction, seeing how it works and all the mechanisms that it takes to get a deal done. And let's go do that and just do it in a space that we know really well. So that was kind of, the passion and the kind of the purpose behind Axia. And yeah, it's fun. Like, I mean, I'm not a big shop. We're not taking the world by storm, but I think that I really try to focus on aligning myself with the right client that has the right mindset, making sure that I'm presenting the right businesses to the open market so that when people see something coming from Axia, they know that it's had Sean's stamp of approval of this is a top flight company that's prepared. It's going to be polished. It's going to have all the skeletons out of the closet. You're going to know everything about it ahead of time. And we're going to run a great process to hopefully keep the stress really low, because it is very stressful. And just try to keep the stress low. That's what they're paying me to do, to get it done so they can continue running their business and just going through the mechanisms of a transaction. So yeah, it's fun. It's really rewarding for me now because I get to see other people reach that goal that they sought out to in their business. And just like yourself with starting a new entity, like I'm sure your goal one day is like, hey, if my kids don't want this thing, I probably am going to exit it, and I want to build it to exit appropriately
100%.
and hit all those goals, right? So yeah, it's been fun to work in the space. I get to talk to a lot of buyers. I know a lot of the private equity groups. I know who's good, bad, and indifferent in terms of which ones I would rather steer my clients to or away from, and kind of just see it from a different lens now, which is really fun to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you guys had an advisor, I mean, did they help you find the private equity company that bought you guys out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did the whole process. They went out, they didn't have a lot of prior experience in the industry by like they didn't have a lot of like personal relationships and like having prior conversations with these guys, but they did a great job of pulling a list of, hey, here's all the guys that we know have already bought roofing or has
Yeah.
said that they're trying to buy roofing companies, and we'll reach out to them, we'll make introductions, and we'll pair you up with some and hopefully get you some good offers. So, I think that was probably no fault of their own, but with our buyer, it probably wasn't the best fit for our company. And we just didn't ask maybe some of the right questions to our buyer to make sure that it was going to be a good match
Yeah.
before we went and consummated the deal with them. So those are things that they just didn't know the right questions to ask because they don't come from the industry. I don't know how they would know those right questions to ask. So those are the things that I get to do now and ask like really, really kind of pinpoint questions that from a seller standpoint, it's really hard to ask those questions directly because you're like, well, that guy's about to pay me a lot of money. I don't want to ruffle feathers.
Hmm.
It's like, well, that's my job now. I get to ask the difficult
Yeah.
questions, but they're not really difficult. They're just more direct.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I get to kind of do all the protecting and let's like unpack everything before we really, you're speed dating and then you immediately are getting married to someone and it's like
Yeah.
happened really, really quickly. So it's like, you got to make sure you get it right and you only got one crack at it. So yeah. Yes, I get to talk to a lot of different folks in the industry, a lot of different buyers, and we had some good opportunities in 21 when we sold, but now it's the world's on fire in roofing, and there's a million buyers, and they all come in different flavors, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been a lot of evolution in the industry, which has been cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's super important for the listeners out there. Like, when you're selling a business, I mean, to work with somebody who has experience as an operator in that business, to me, that is like 100% key. Because when I was going through it and I was sitting down with different brokers, I mean, you're sitting with these guys, like you said, they're like bankers. They don't have operating experience, especially in your industry. And if they don't have it, it's like they just don't know the lingo. They don't know the ins and outs, all the nuances. And I think it's super, important to have somebody like yourself that can represent the company that inside and out because you operated the company as well. I mean, I think it's great. You're actually the third broker I've had on the podcast where they were industry specific because I think it's great. I mean, I think it's something that's fairly new too. I mean, shoot, even 10 years ago when I was talking to brokers, I didn't come across a lot of industry specific brokers. So,
Yeah,
I commend you because I think I think this is great to niche down like this.
yeah,
And as roofers out there, because listen, I'm sure you probably come across a bunch of different types of companies, right? They're not all going to PE. You might get guys that are maybe going to sell to, an operator, right? So you want to talk a little bit about the
100%.
different variety of, sellers that you have that you're dealing with as well.
Yeah, I mean, like at the smaller scale companies, I would say like less than 1 million in EBITDA or net income for if you're looking at your P&L at home and you're kind of saying like, well, where do I stack up in this? If you're looking at net income, without any adjustments, if you're sub 1 million, you're going to have a few smaller private equity groups, more independent sponsors where it's maybe one or two guys. They left maybe they were at an investment bank or a private equity group. They want to do it on their own now. They want to go operate their own business. So maybe it's their first time going out and raising a little bit of money to buy one company, come in, run it. Or maybe it's a mom and pop. Maybe it's a guy that left corporate America and he's going to go get an SBA loan and he's going to
Yeah.
buy your company for a few $1,000,000. That's kind of where you'd be if you're sub 1 million, typically in EBITDA. Or net income. If you're above that, that's where you have the full spectrum of buyers, where there's a bunch of private equity interests, where it's guys, groups that are raising, 50 million, 100 million, 200 plus, big committed capital, where they're saying, hey, we want to go buy, our thesis is residential roofing in the Sunbelt region, and we're going to go deploy $100 million as quickly as possible on companies, and we're going to consolidate them into one entity, and then we're going to package them up maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, and we're going to go sell them to a bigger private equity group for a lot more money, and we're going to make a spread there, and everyone's going to be rich and happy. So it comes in different flavors, and there's a lot of nuances to how the deals get done, with all those different buyer profiles, right? And how they get the debt. They're not all paying cash. There's a lot of debt that's involved. There's different kinds of debt. SBA has a lot of regulations behind it, that makes some sellers' businesses not even financeable. And to no fault of their own, there's just SBA regulations. And then on the higher end private equity, they're more flexible and they can kind of understand why your P&L is designed a certain way for you operating a roofing company, and they can kind of get away with still getting financing on stuff like that. So it comes in a lot of different shapes and flavors. And I would say 5 years ago, that probably wasn't the case. There was very few private equity groups, and it was all people that were just mom and pop buying another mom and pop shop. And now valuations have increased tremendously because of additional demand and the same amount of supply of available mom and pop groups to buy. And as time goes on, there'll be less and less. And the guys that are running and scaling quality local businesses, they're going to have more and more premium applied to their company when they do end up exiting, because the potential cream of the crop just gets smaller and smaller, and private equity is still looking to gobble up companies, and they're looking for quality companies to buy. So, I think that we'll see a lot higher valuations as time goes on. I don't know how long the window will be open. It's wide open right now. Private equity seems very enthralled with roofing, but we might fast forward a few years and they might say, this is really tough. These are tough businesses to actually operate. And maybe we'll pivot and we're not doing that anymore. Now our new fund is going to be buying CPA firms because we want to go back to white collar. Who knows? So a lot of it's time and place. And I'm sure that that too. Like a lot of it's not, you can't control sometimes the timing and the market effects. You gotta, I always just tell people like, hey, design your company like it should be ready to sell on a moment's notice. And if you design it from day one like that, you'll be able to pick and choose the timing of when you think this is the right time to do it. And you're already going to be prepared. And there's not going to be this whole push to get prepared to even go to market, which could take 12, 18 months. And then you miss the window. Right. Yes. So, I think preparation is always key, just like anything.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, what would you say the biggest issue that you're coming across, or the most prevalent, like the one you've seen the most, I guess, as far as when these businesses are coming to you to get listed, where you're looking at it and you're like, this is just not ready for sale, or this is really killing your valuations. If we change this one thing or tweak this, we could get you a better valuation. What would you say with that?
I would say for the most part, the owner likes to still do some sales. There's still some sales being done by the owner. Too much of it, too much revenue is being produced by the owner still, because they're the best sales guy in the universe. They don't want to give up all their old, this client has been with us since day one, and they won't talk to anyone else in my company. There's a lot of just flipping the mindset more than anything of no, they'll still buy from your other salespeople. Believe me. So that would probably be the biggest thing, is the operator being too involved in the business and not on the business. And then kind of coupling that idea would be not enough structure in the organizational hierarchy where it's kind of owner at the top and then everyone else linear below the owner and everyone just reports to the
Yep.
owner instead of it being an owner and a GM or a person in charge of production and a person in charge of sales with people underneath them. Even that secondary level is just so valuable to the next person because the next person saying, well, if I pay Teddy $10 million and he was selling 50% of the leads, he's probably not as motivated to go run 50% of leads once he gets this
No.
big liquidity event, right? So they want to make sure that all seats are still on the bus, everyone's still performing the same jobs that they're performing, and then they want to try to find talent that they can then elevate into the company. So that's most of the part is more like personnel and like right seat, right person, right seat kind of fits that I try to look at with people. And then financials is the next
Yep.
thing. Just not clear financials. There's no accrual. It's all cash basis. It's all my CPA takes my bank statements twice a year and then
Yep.
spits out one-time report at the end of the year. Just not paying attention to a lot of the as close to gap compliant financials as we can get them. And that's just so big for buyers. Like every buyer is going to require like pretty much the same format that they want to see the financials in order for them to feel really good about it without throwing a huge haircut on the valuation of the business. So
Yep.
yeah, those are the main things. I mean, the rest of the stuff, there's hair on every deal. There's an issue with that company for this reason, or there's an issue with that, and it's all just part of the business and the industry. And some of it's regionalized. The way that they do business in New Jersey is different than we do
Yep.
it down here in Florida. So there's just all those things. But yeah, I would say those main things that I pointed out is kind of like the 90% of the problems that I see. If we could solve those, most people would have something that's pretty dang sellable.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's a 12 to 18 month fix, right? I mean, if somebody comes to you with any of those three issues, I mean, it's going to take some time. That's something you could fix in 30 days, right? So
Yeah.
you have to prepare for this stuff. And most contractors are not running like that. I mean, the most guys that I speak to, my clients, I mean, these are the exact issues that I work on with them because I'm like, this is going to kill your valuation right here. Those are the three I would 100% agree. And the number one thing you mentioned, first one you said, it was the fact that they're still involved in the day to day. And
Yeah.
it's very hard for them to break that mindset. It is that is a massive mindset shift that they have to make, but it is the number one value driver, if you're involved, because you're a key player and you're absolutely right. If you get a big liquidity event, you're not going to want to be involved anymore in that business. And
Yeah.
then, that they're not going to pay all that money for that,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, I talk to a lot of guys where I'm just like, I don't think could you go to market today? Will another business broker, investment banker take you to market today?
Yes.
1000%.
Yeah,
1000%.
yes, definitely.
Me personally, I have my own limitations of like, I just don't feel comfortable. I just think if you spent X amount of time on this short list of things, you'll just have such a better result. And you only got one time to get this thing right.
Yep.
Like, please pause, do them. Let's look at it again, and then you'll be so much happier for the end result. And some guys are just like, look, time and place, I got to go
Yep.
now, and
Yep.
I'll take a discount, and that's fine. There's plenty of opportunity and plenty of buyers that will look at that. It just doesn't align well with who I want to represent and the companies that I want to. I want to make sure it's a more prepared approach for all parties. And I know that the end result is just a better end result for everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Now, do you do any buy side work? Like if I came to you and said, "Hey, Sean, I want to buy a couple, roofing companies and do a little bit of a roll up. Can you go out there and scout these guys for me and connect us?" Is that any type of work you do or no?
I typically don't. I mean, if it's someone that's near and dear to me, maybe a friend or a family member that's like, man, I love to stop doing this job and I like to go buy a company. Could you do you know anyone that maybe you didn't represent them, but they've called on you for some kind of guidance, or maybe they were thinking about selling? I'll connect them in that kind of manner. But no, I try not to do too much like outbound hunting for people. I like to kind of my deal flow on the sell side is good enough for where I'm at. Again, I'm pretty small. I only will do a few deals a year, and I'm very choosy of just kind of where I'm at. And
Yep.
it sounds I don't want it's not an ego thing. It has nothing to do with that. It's just I'm trying to find a balance of enjoying my personal life with young
Yeah.
kids and like coming out of an exit. Like I know what it looks like to be in the trenches, and I
Yeah.
just find more balance now. So I just pass on a lot of opportunities, and I usually just am like, hey, here's a good broker you could call that I think would do a good job for you. Or, hey, I got a buddy who's looking, I can make a connection for you. And how about we just
Yeah.
do that? So I do it here and there, but no,
Yeah.
not a full-time thing.
No, I hear you, man. 100%. I mean, I'm literally going through the same thing now. Like the way I'm starting this business, because I just, had an exit in the last couple of years, completely different mindset around how I started, how I want to bootstrap it, how much I want to put into it. A lot of guys I talk to are like, oh, I can't believe you're spending that. Like I'm doing branding right off the gate. I'm using Ryan from Prolific Brands, and I'm really putting people in place that technically shouldn't be there, but I'm already setting it up for that valuation purpose.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when you have that mindset, again, I have 7 kids, so I got a lot of kids too, man. So you get to a position in life where it's like, all right, well, I don't have to go as hard. I don't have to cut corners as much as I used to when back in the day. And it's a nice place to be for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And like, I think that the mindset that, there's, what I see more than anything is most roofing businesses are great lifestyle business for the owner, where they're at a point where they're like, I've been on cruise control for a decade. I've been making quarter million, $500,000 a year distributions every single year. It's great. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to probably get much smaller. It's a lifestyle, and I've set it up that way. Then there's the other half that's like, I'm going to make no money for the foreseeable future, and I'm just going
Yeah.
to reinvest every dollar I got into this business because I know that the valuation on the EBITDA in 5 years is going to be
Yeah.
the big, big dollar. And that's all I'm care about. That's my
Yeah.
North Star. And I'm going to go chase that as quickly as possible. And who cares what happens in distribution world for the next 4 or 5 years? Because it's all going to be nothing if you can get paid 10, $20 million on the back end for something that took you 5 years to run. Who cares about the few $100,000 a year, right? So there's
Yep.
there's kind of part of, there's two different pathways to do it. And I think with you having a second round and a second go on this, like, you now see that of like, oh, I just got to build towards that North Star number, and then I know someone will be there to pay me this big check, and then hopefully I'm done. Maybe there's not a third go around, I'm done.
Yeah, no, hopefully, man. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the game I'm playing, and it's a fun game to play. I mean, I've considered buying too. I looked at different options. So should I buy a competitor, buy someone who's in the space already? But I bootstrap so many companies now. I mean, it's like what I know so well, and it's I like it. I mean, I like the fact that I'm 100% owner. I'm coming in with no partners. It's a nice place to start, and it's exciting to get into a new industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that I tell people that, the 0 to 1 versus the 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, whatever you want to say, the 0 to 1 is just as hard as
Yep.
2 to 100. So
Yes.
like, if you don't have the mindset for that 0 to 1, then go out and just buy an existing
Yes.
business, and then you can
Hmm.
just take it from 2 to 100. There's already some foundation there. You
Yep.
got some comfortability there. But if you have that mindset of like, no, like, I want to do it my way, my stamp, my DNA, that 0 to 1, that's where you
Yep.
make your bread. You set it up from day one, and that's how you have that like ultimate success, is because you control the narrative from day one. And there's no right answer. They're both great for different people, and it's just trying to find what works best for you as an operator and an entrepreneur, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you have clients come to you, you have roofing companies that are reaching out to you to get listed for sale. I
Yeah.
mean, what does that process look like for you? And when you explain to them, you say, "Hey, listen, this is going to take 6 to 12 months. This is what you're looking at." And what can you explain a little bit about the process? Because a lot of guys that are listening in, they've never sold a company, right? A lot of people, they do it one time and that's it, right? So can you explain the
Yep.
process of a sale and how the typical process works?
Yeah, so process with me would be a initial conversation of like, I just want to learn. I want to hear it from you. Like, why do you want to sell? Why do you think now is the right time? What has you interested in talking to me about helping you do this? What do you need help with what do you think you need help with today to kind of get you to where you need to go? And then it's some financials. It's like, hey, send me a list of some P&Ls from the past few years, your balance sheets, give me employee number, employee count, maybe some kind of organizational structure of kind of how you set your company up. And then from there, I kind of do a recast of financials where I take your financials as you're preparing them as an owner, where you're running a lot of personal stuff through it, or there's a lot of one-time events in the P&L.
Yep.
And then I adjust it for what I know a buyer would be adjusting for. So I'm going to have deep conversations of, tell me all the personal stuff you're running through the business. Tell me about your rebate programs. Are you using the rebates personally that you get? Are you using the credit card rebates to go on a vacation with your wife?
Yep.
Or are you reinvesting it in the business?
Yeah.
Are you paying for private school through through the business? Are you buying personal cars through the business? What about healthcare? Are you offering healthcare? Oh, you don't offer healthcare. Well, they're probably going to want to offer healthcare, and
Yep.
they're going to adjust your EBITDA down to make sure that that is all adjusted for. So there's all this normalizing, and I kind of do a pretty good enough where I can give them a pretty good number on kind of, hey, here's your trailing 12 months. Here's kind of your past 2 years history. And then I give my projection on what I think like low multiple, midpoint multiple, high multiple that I think if they went to market on those numbers, what they could expect to get on an offer. And then from there, kind of give them a breakdown of like, here's how much cash of that price that we can expect to get at closing. Here's how much rollover equity, and here's how much earnout you would probably expect. And I explained to them the earnout of like, hey, they're going to want to see you put 20% of the purchase price into an earnout that you're going to then have to go earn over the next maybe 12 to 24 months. And they want to see some growth in the business for you to actually
Yep.
reach that earnout. So it's not really money in your pocket. It could be, but you have to go earn it and help them earn it. So they kind of don't want you to leave. They want you to stick around and earn that. Then there's the rollover component where it's, hey, they want you to have some skin in the game and want you to be a shareholder of the platform that they're building. So maybe they own 10 other roofing contractors and you're the 11th one. Well, they're going to offer you 10 million bucks, and they want you to take a million of that 10 million and reinvest it and give it back to them in exchange for some shares in their 11 roofing companies that they currently own. So then hopefully if you're investing in the right platform and they're doing all the right things and all the companies grow and they sell it for a lot more than they bought it, your $1 million might become $2-3 million. So there's that component to it. So explaining all those things where it's not just like, hey, at closing, you get to walk away the next day, go on a vacation, and you get 100% of your money at closing, and there's no taxes that you pay
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
and all these great things that people might tell you. And then I
Yep.
kind of tell them, I'm not a CPA. I don't do tax analysis, but I say, look, most of the time people pay capital gains 20% typically on whatever you sell the business for that ends up in your bank account at closing is what you're going to end up paying taxes on. So yeah, that's kind of the process from there. That's the upfront process that I do, free of charge up front. And then from there, if they're like, hey, I'm ready to go, or maybe I'm almost ready, but give me some levers that I could pull, we kind of say, tweak this, tweak that, let's change this, let's renegotiate some pricing here. I think you're leaving money on the table with rebates over there. Maybe your insurance policies are too high, and I think you can renegotiate those. We try to pull all those quicker levers and then start to prepare with like due diligence. Like, here's all the due diligence I want you to give me up front. I think that the buyer will be asking for all this stuff down the road when we're under contract, so you should give it to me now. And then we build basically what we call a SIM, which is like a really robust PowerPoint that has every piece of information about the business that a buyer would want to look at. And then from there, I'm going to market. I'm presenting that to buyers that I know would be interested in the business. And they sign an NDA. They look at the SIM. If they're interested, they ask more questions. And then we ask a mandate of a certain time frame, usually a month, to bring offers in. And then we probably pick a few of them to meet with in person. We fly them in. We have a nice dinner. That's when we get to know them really well. We say, hey, we like what you see, what you've sent on paper, but let me really talk to the guys running the show. Let me really get to know them over a glass of wine and a dinner. And like, let's talk personal, like who we are as people. Is this a good meeting of the minds? Do we feel like we could be married for the next few years on this? And then from there, you're picking one of those horses to go exclusive with and sign a letter of intent. And then typically due diligence is 60 days, 45, 60 days. And it's every all hands on deck, an attorney, a CPA, legal team, tax team, you name it. Everyone's uncovering everything about your business. And then hopefully we get the deal consummated in that time frame, and then you move on.
Yeah, that's
Is
perfect.
that
And
is that a good rundown?
yeah, no, I think that was perfect, man. That's exactly the process that's the process I understand for sure. I mean, I'd like to unpack a few of those things. I mean,
Sure.
you talked about earnouts. I mean, is every deal that you're putting together, I mean, are majority of the deals, are they like requiring an earnout most likely? I mean, what's that look like?
No, I mean, on the smaller end, like with SBA deals, typically there's not going to be an earnout. Not
Yeah.
that I do those, but I would say that swath, like smaller deals, is mostly going to be cash at closing. Will make up 90% of the deal, and maybe they'll want you to owner finance
Yes.
something
Yep.
small, maybe 10%, 5-10% note that you hold for a few years on the back end. But there's typically not an earnout, and there's typically not a rollover of equity in those deals. On the private equity world, as you get a little bit bigger, there's definitely going to be a component of rollover equity for like 90% of the deals. And typically they're going to want you to roll over like 10% or more. And then on the earnout, I would say, um, let me use some numbers. I would say probably a third of the deals have an earnout component and two-thirds do not.
Yeah.
And I would say the more prepared and polished your company, robust it is, larger in size, profitability, if you have more green flags than red flags, the less likelihood they're going to try to require an earnout.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
sometimes a seller wants an earnout in a certain capacity if there's a growth mechanism to the earnout, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe the earnout's $1 million this next 12 months and another million, but if I can outkick my coverage, it could turn into 1.5 million and then another 1.5 million, where then you're kind of betting on yourself for some growth as well. And maybe the owner, the seller is kind of seeing, I think we're kind of going in the right direction. I think month over month we're growing. We got some large projects coming down the pipeline. Maybe we could peg this thing where I can overachieve on that earnout and I'm willing to bet on myself. So sometimes a client will say that. But if you're really, really polished, there's typically going to be mostly cash at close with a little rollover and you're off to the
Yeah.
races.
Yeah, and what are you seeing with private equity? I mean, are they requiring that the sellers? I mean, it's almost 100% of the time. Like, let me give you an example. Like, if the owner is not involved, let's say he got himself out of the day to day, nothing relies on the owner. He's basically just high level, just overseeing KPIs. Now he goes to sell to private equity. Are they still going to require that owner to stay on for a certain amount of time? What are you seeing in those situations?
If they're really, really polished and there's like a full team in place, and as you scale up, like that is going to be the case, right? If you're
Yeah,
doing 30 million in the roofing industry, you probably have a full team and you're probably just doing those functions. Then, yeah, you might be on for a few months and they are like, hey, we have management at the corporate private equity level that we don't really need you to run the KPIs. We
yeah,
can we can run them ourselves, and you got a great team in place. Good luck on your next endeavor. See you later. Or if you're in the place of like a retirement age, they're definitely not going to require you to stay on board. They're going to say, can you give me a little transition, few months
yeah,
post transaction, where if I need you, we can call you, bring you in the office. Maybe we need you to keep an employee happy or have a discussion with someone post transaction. But day to day, we'll take all those things away from you. But there are a lot of groups that are like, hey, I like you to be on board for the next 1 to 2 years, and we'll pay you handsomely for that, but we want to see you help us get to the next stage of all this growth that you're telling us you're going to
yeah,
have, and all
yeah.
the things you're presenting to the outside world. We're going to pay you on that, but in turn, we're going to lock you into some kind of employment agreement where you're going to be here for a few years, and help us see that through. So it kind of depends, and like that's part of our job of like unpacking like what are the real priorities for our client. Like, is it money or is it buying back their time right away?
Yeah.
Like there's all these different things, and then I have to look at the list of all the private equity groups and kind of understand what they typically will want from a client,
Yeah.
and from a seller of a company, and kind of try to find that match of like, oh, this one wants owners out right away, they got a great management team, and my seller wants to move on and go to Costa
Perfect.
Rica.
Yeah.
Perfect match, great,
Yeah.
let's have a discussion with them. So I think there's just a lot of and that's where like me working just niche in one industry gives me a lot of visibility, where like it wouldn't drive me crazy to be an agnostic
Yeah. 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 Because
investment banker, because
yeah.
I would be trying to wing things as we're
Yeah.
going, and that just doesn't work for my personality.
Yeah.
Now, could I do a lot more deals? Yeah, probably, but they just wouldn't be, I don't think I wouldn't do as good of a job as I could do with just focusing on one thing.
No, exactly. I mean, I'm sure intimately these private equity companies. There's probably only a handful or a couple of right? There's probably a very small amount of private equity that buys roofing businesses in the United States, right? It's probably not
Yeah.
like a massive amount of private equity companies. So if you have a great relationship with these companies and you know them intimately, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's a huge leg up as opposed to going to just a regular broker that sells all types of businesses. He doesn't know. They're going to pitch your business to whoever is going to give you the most money or the best deal structure or whatever, and
Right.
yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that's great, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As far as your team, you mentioned team. So like if a company comes to you and they don't have, a lot of companies, a lot of companies don't realize that they need, an M&A attorney, not a business attorney, right? They need an
Yep.
M&A tax advisor, not just your regular
Yeah.
accountant, right? So you want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the team? Do you help them bring that team together? Is that something you can do?
Yeah, I surely make my suggestions. The first thing I ask them is like, hey, like I know you might have like a family attorney or like, an estate attorney, but like please don't use them. Like we just can't, we can't, you're gonna do yourself a huge disservice. We're gonna be at a competitive disadvantage from day
Yeah.
one. So I always give them recommendations on M&A attorneys that I've worked with, that I trust, that I know knows the industry, that have done deals in the industry and kind of knows a lot of the nuances there. Because it's kind of rinse and repeat from a legal standpoint. Like
Yeah.
once you kind of like an attorney sees the docs a few times in the industry, they kind of know what standard negotiations will look like and like what levers they need to be focusing on. So yeah, I always make recommendations. And then if they're, if their financials are a little messier or they're not clear, or, like I have a client coming up where they have a bunch of different entities that are all under one EIN legally, but they're only going to sell off some of the roofing stuff, but then they're going to keep some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So I told them, hey, we need to get a quality of earnings study, which is basically like we're going to have a third party CPA dig into your books, recreate the financials, and really pull out the things that we need to present to the open market of who we want to sell these businesses to. So I recommend those kind of things, and like definitely have vendors that I trust, because I've just seen it go the wrong way when you use the person that, and I get it. Like you want to, hey, this is my buddy. And I told him
Yeah.
whenever I sold, I was going to like hire him and I want him to get the money. But it's also like, I think your buddy will also understand that how difficult it could be for them to actually get the job done at a high rate. And surely it could ruin a friendship if it goes the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I always try to make recommendations. 99% of the time I prep them and they always are like, yeah, whoever you say, I feel really good about
Yeah.
it. And I'll give them the best opportunity. And usually they go with and I always say, hey, call a prior client of ours and ask them how it was working with this vendor or that vendor, and hear it from the horse's mouth, hear it from the person that had to hire them and pay them, because I'm not paying them. And usually that conversation goes well, and they usually hire the people I recommend. But yeah, I vetted internal team, external team, the buyers. I try to keep it very tight with just high quality, high functioning people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I experienced that in my own deal because I had partners in my deal and they didn't want to pay for the M&A attorney. They were like, well, just use, whatever he was down the road. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm like, bro, we can't do that. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's just not going to work, So,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
when I like, as part of my initial valuation like breakdown, like I give them like estimated costs of what I think it'll cost them to hire an attorney. And like most of the time on a deal, if it's 10 million and under sales price, I'm typically saying, hey, for an attorney, you want a budget between like 60 to $100,000. And they're just shocked.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
always like, oh,
yeah,
what? a hundred
yes,
thousand
yeah,
dollars? My buddy will do it for 10. And I said,
yeah,
let me show you a sample set of documents that are prepared. If you have an earnout, you have a rollover, and you have your purchase and sale agreement. Those are three separate legal documents that everyone is jockeying over terms on.
yeah,
They are 300, 400 pages of legalese. Like this isn't chat GPT, you
no,
spit out
no,
a 2-page agreement that we're signing for $10 million. Like this
yeah,
is the most important closing documents you've ever seen in your life, because post transaction, you're still kind of married. It's
yes,
not like selling a
100%.
house. You sell a house, you're done at closing.
Yeah,
That's it. All liability is gone. Well, there's reps and warranties. You're warranting and representing certain things in your business that you say are factual to the
yeah,
buyer. And if the buyer finds out that, you said something and it really wasn't the case, they could come back and claw back at you and through litigation. And you got to make sure that your legal documents are set up appropriately. You're protected. You have insurance policies in place to protect yourself, because you just don't know how things will go post transaction and you're
yeah,
married to them. Right. So like
yeah,
you got to get it right. So when I tell people that money is well spent, they're just like, I just seems crazy to me. And I'm just like, no, the
yeah.
other side is spending, probably on a buy side, they're probably spending $250,000 on their legal side. So I'm like, they're investing a lot of money to get this deal done. You should also probably be spending some good coin, because you want them to fight the good fight on your behalf during negotiations. So
Yeah, yeah, and if you're dealing with attorneys that don't deal with this every day, it's like they don't understand the nuances, and you're going to get yourself into a jam. To like, basically, you get yourself into a position where you could get screwed on the earnout, or
oh yeah,
even the seller note. I mean, there's so many nuances that go into the deal where it's like, yeah, this 100 grand, you saved 100 grand, but now it cost you 500,000 because you're not getting
correct.
earnout, or you're not getting, you know what I mean? So it's like you
Yeah.
don't go cheap in this situation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, penny wise, dollar foolish. Definitely don't want to do that. I mean, yeah, it's expensive, but at the end of the day, it's a big liquidity event. As a percentage of what you're probably going to put in your piggy bank, it's well worth it. You just got to get it done the right way. Like I keep hammering on. It's like you only got one business to sell. Like it's
Yes.
not like poof, you're going to keep creating these. I mean, some people are like that, serial entrepreneurs. Like you're like that. You'll probably have multiple exits, but most people are going to have this one exit, and they probably worked decades to get to this one exit. Like
Yeah.
we should not be selling ourselves short and squabbling
No.
over 10 or 20 grand here or there. Like let's spend the money, get this thing done the right way. So.
No, exactly. And I'm sure after you went through it yourself, right? You probably look back in your deal and were like, oh man, I wish I would have changed this or that or tweaked this, or wish I would have looked at this better. Because I know I did it for my deal. I still go back and look at it. I mean, I got a seller note I'm still dealing with. It's been a little bit of a nightmare.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, you go through it and then you're like, shit, you should have, would have, could have. So you
A
gotta have the right
hundred
advisors.
percent, 100%. And once it's signed and executed, there's no revisions to it. It
No.
is what it is. You just get to look at it and be upset about it that it didn't have this one sentence in there that could have protected you in a certain scenario that pops up 2 years down the road. You just don't know. Like
Yeah.
you said, you just don't know. So yeah, preparation, and pay quality money for quality people to make sure it gets done the right way.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, let's dive into a little bit of some of the numbers real quick, just some what you're seeing in the
Sure.
market in today right now. So let's give a couple different scenarios, right? Let's say you have a roofing company that's doing 500,000 in EBITDA or SDE, and
Yeah.
then you have one that's doing a couple million. Why don't you give a little bit of different scenarios
Yeah.
and what they're selling multiple wise and how that affects the multiples, what different things affect the multiples and whatnot.
Yeah, so let's talk on the smaller scale side. So let's say $500,000 in EBITDA. That would probably, if it's a residential re-roofing contractor, let's say it's very middle of the fairway. All buyers are attracted to retail sales, residential operation. That is kind of like where 95% of the buyers are all looking. So let's use that as the example. You're going to sell to somebody for probably somewhere in the 5 times that range, I would say right now. If it has some, what I would say some good growth potential behind it, where there's maybe a few key players at that point. Maybe it's an owner, but then there's like maybe some head salesperson and someone running production for you at that level. That would be a good starting kind of company for someone to grow. So you're probably selling somewhere in that 4 to 5.5 range, somewhere in that vicinity. But probably let's just call it 5 times that. So $2.5 million enterprise value, and then on a small deal like that, like I said, it's probably mostly going to be cash, maybe with a small seller note, maybe a 10% seller note on something like that. And then as we scale up, let's say a larger company that has 2 million in EBITDA, that's probably going to go for 6.5 to 7 times if it's polished and has like good organizational structure, middle of the fairway kind of business model. That's probably in the upper 6 to 7 range, and that will have some fluctuation in the tranche, the buckets of how the money is, but probably 80% cash, 10% earn out, 10% rollover, to use some just rough example there.
Yep. Yeah, now you
Very, but
mentioned
I mean, if we just like going back, Teddy, like let's say 10 years ago, if you look at comps for those same kind of companies, like
a lot less. Yeah.
no one's trading for more than like 4 times. Like even
Yeah.
if you have 2 million EBITDA, you're trading for
Yeah.
four. So like you could see that just expansion of multiples, doing the same business, expansion of multiples is a macro factor that no one can control, that the window's wide open because people are paying a heck of a lot more money right now, because everyone is having their eyes and everyone's very interested in consolidating the roofing industry. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, the money's just pouring in since COVID. It's absolutely insane. Some of these multiples.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen guys like we turned down an offer on a company. We had an offer on a company that sold earlier this year that they came in with an offer that was 9 times. We didn't take
Wow.
that offer because I didn't think it was going to close, but we had an offer at 9 times, like 1.5 million in EBITDA. And we ended
Wow.
up,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh. That's
yeah.
crazy.
But like, I know that if they went to go raise money on that and go try to put debt
Yeah.
on it, they were going to fall short and then probably try to retrade us. But there
Wow.
are people that
Yeah.
are extending offers that are like almost double digit for a single unit roofing contractor, just run of the mill, a market leader in their local market, but nothing that's like this conglomerate or anything like that. So you could just see that there's just a lot of frenzy right now in the
Yeah.
roofing industry, which is good for sellers, but you got to be careful.
Yep.
because there's nothing binding about the agreement.
Yeah, they get you
They can,
wrapped up. They get you wrapped in
yeah,
the agreement now for months and months and months, and then they drag you to the end, and then they're like, "Well,
yeah.
we could do it, but it's going to be for this price." Yeah, you said retrade, so you can explain what retrading is for everyone listening, so they understand how it works.
Yeah, so first question that usually people ask is like, "Hey, like, what kind of deposit are they going to put down?" Well, the buyer doesn't put any deposit down in
Yep.
the M&A world. They basically are going to put together a letter of intent that
Yep.
is going to kind of give you all the terms of the expected deal in terms of the valuation, all the nuances that they want you to do and you want them to do, and all of that. And both attorneys review it, and then you execute that. And then once you execute that, you're under due diligence exclusively with that buyer, and that buyer has right to do all the due diligence they need to try to get the deal done, and you give them X amount of days to do that. Typically it's like a 45, 60-day window with like maybe 1 month of extension or something like that. And then what some groups will do, groups that might not have the best reputation, or maybe it could be also on the seller side. The seller isn't fully representing their
Yep.
business up front. They're falsifying things. So new things are realized during that due diligence, and that buyer will try to potentially exhaust the seller and kick the can down the road and just run them ragged, and then come back and say, well, we uncovered X, Y, and Z. We told you we are going to pay 6 multiple on $1 million. Well, now we're only going to offer you 4 multiple on $1 million. Take it or leave it, And now you're in a position where you just wasted a few months of time. You're really tired. You want to get it done, and they know that, and they try to use that to their advantage, and they try to retrade the deal.
Yep.
It's my job and good investment bankers' jobs to make sure that you're only going under LOI with groups that are legit, that will close on the expected terms, because it's their reputation, right? If they ruin their reputation and they're always retrading deals, they're gonna have a hard time getting more deals
Of
done.
course. Yeah.
So you want to find good reputation buyers. You want to call their other acquisitions, if they've already done some acquisitions, and talk to the owners and say, how did your deal go? The initial LOI, did they close at those terms, or did they maybe pay more because maybe the earnings study came back and you were actually more profitable than you thought? And you kind of can hear it from the horse's mouth, and you do that ahead of time before you get in bed with someone on exclusivity. And the idea is, when you do sign that LOI, like, we are closing this thing, and it is
Yeah.
going to be at these terms, and that's what it is. So
Yeah, and of
yeah.
course, that's part of your reason why you vet these contractors so much too before you go to market, right? Because you want to make sure that these issues don't come up, So
A
that's a big
hundred
part of it.
percent.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm getting a full data room stood up. I have every
yeah,
list from every attorney and every business, every buyer that we've ever dealt with. I compile them all together, and I have my own due diligence list, and I send it to my client ahead of time, and I say, here's the full list of things that we can expect them to ask us. There might be some here and there that they're going to add on top of that, new things that we haven't thought of, but here is 99% of the list. I need you to answer all these ahead of time. I need you to provide all the documents ahead of time. I'm going to look through them, and then I'm going to tell you if we're ready to go to market or not.
yeah,
Because if there's things that I see in there, and I'm leery of things, and I'm asking questions,
yeah,
buyer surely is going to be asking those questions.
100%.
So let's solve those things before we get to market, so that when we get to market, it's like we're the most presentable client they've ever seen. They're going to pay a premium for that. Things will go really quick through due diligence. It's going to be a very happy experience for all parties, and everyone's going to be really excited to get to closing, instead of everyone being pissed off by the time you
Yes.
get to closing, which happens a lot. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, 100%. You also brought up residential. So can you explain why the majority of the buyers, the PE companies, are looking for 100% residential retail roofing companies as opposed to companies that are doing insurance work, chasing storms, that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's easier to understand.
Yeah.
There's just another level of knowledge that the buyer would have to understand the nuances, as we know as contractors in the roofing industry, what insurance looks like and how it
Yeah.
works, and why certain regions have a lot more exposure to it than others. And there are groups that do buy companies with insurance exposure, but I would say that if you want to cater to the middle 50%, the middle of the fairway, everyone knows retail, where it's just like, from a private equity lens, how many times can I make this phone ring, and how
Yep.
many conversions can we get on that? And we're just going to sell as many of those jobs directly to consumers as possible. That's easy for me to understand that model, versus, well, we got this managed repair program
Yeah.
with this State Farm, and maybe we get a storm, and maybe we get 1,000 claims, and maybe we don't.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pencil that out for my
Yep.
investors, right? So there's a lot of like unpacking that they have to do there. The more difficult the business is to understand and the industry to understand, the less they want to pay and the less interest they have in it. So I think as time has went on over the past few years, there's more and more buyers that are definitely more open to different mixes, because they're starting to realize, like, yeah, they're not every, not every roofing contractor is just retail residential. Like, that's
Yep.
just that's not the way it works. So I think there's just there's a lot of learning happening still on the private equity world, where they are learning as they're going too, of like, okay, maybe we should get off of this hard criteria on this and start to open up our eyes to maybe this other potential opportunity in the roofing space and this mix of work, or maybe a blend of commercial and residential operations versus just 100% residential or 100% commercial, because we're not seeing enough quality deals. So we need to open up our eyes to what else is out there. And as time goes on, I think there's just more and more of that happening, which is good for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. It's a way different business model when you're going after insurance work versus straight to retail. And it's a totally different game. It's literally like having a completely different business. Yes, you're doing the
Correct.
same thing. You're putting on a roof, but the processes are completely different.
A
The way you
hundred
get your
percent.
clients, I mean, everything is just so different.
Yep.
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, this has been great. This has been a great conversation. I think we're bringing a lot of value to anybody in the roofing space. I mean, if you're thinking about selling or getting an evaluation of what your business is worth, you absolutely should be hitting up Sean, because he's obviously the expert in this space. How
Appreciate
can
that.
people get in contact with you, Sean? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Go on our website, axiadvisors.com. Easy to schedule right on my calendar, right there through the website. Or you can email me. It's just my first name at axiadvisors.com. Very easy. And I'm pretty easy to get in contact with. And then outside of that, if there's just anyone out there that needs just second set of eyes of just like, hey, maybe I'm not ready to sell, but I'm in the roofing industry, and you heard my story about how I kind of, how we did things at our roofing business and kind of scaling of that. If anyone just ever needs a second set of eyes and just a second opinion on stuff, I'm always here to help. Just want to raise the bar in the home service industry. There's just there's a lot of unquality contractors out there running around taking market share from the quality guys, and I really like to see the quality guys continue to succeed and try to thrive. So anytime anyone needs anything, and from that lens, I'm always here to help.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Sean, and look forward to working with you hopefully in the future here. And let's stay in contact for sure.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, Teddy.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.